The mist's clear. The psychic's eyes roll back. They're white. An impossibly deep voice says, "Warning. Adult content and situations within. Proceed with caution." PseudoPod, October 14th, 2022. This week's stories: Flash on the Borderlands 63. Respect your elders. Hey everyone, welcome to PseudoPod, the weekly horror podcast, and welcome to one of my favourite things that we do, the 63rd instalment of Flash on the Borderlands. Elder really is a word with a lot of meanings in our neck of the woods, isn't it? Not just the inevitable non-Euclidean implications that lead to hapless protagonists frantically sandpapering corners off things, but also the inevitable collision between the past and the present, and a blazing argument that often leads to over what the future should look like. We've talked before, and I have no doubt will again, about the importance of giving attention to voices in the field that play the music of the past on new instruments. Or perhaps play new tunes on old instruments. Sometimes it's difficult to tell. You'd have to ask Eric Zahn to be sure. But for now, we're going to look at one of the other readings of that particular word, the idea of respecting people older than you. So much older. And our first story this week comes to us from our very own Kat Day. Kat is a PhD chemist who was once a teacher and is now a writer and editor. By day, she works as an editor of scientific and medical materials. By night, she mostly does all the stuff she hasn't managed to do during the day. I feel you, buddy, I really do. She's had articles published in Chemistry World, has written science content for DK, and has produced scripts for Crash Course Organic Chemistry. Her fiction can be found at the, we hope, temporarily dry-docked and much-loved Daily Science Fiction. If you're a member of the team over there, we are sending you every good wish. Cast of Wonders and PseudoPod, among others. She lives on Twitter at Chronicle Flask and in the real world with her husband, 2 children and cat in Oxfordshire, England. She thinks black coffee is far superior to tea, and the purple liquid on the stovetop is none of your concern. Kat has been with us since 2019 and became assistant editor in 2021 and is amazing. We're delighted to have her, and we're also delighted to have her narrate this story. So, without further ado, Kat has a story for you, and we promise you, it's true.
When I was young, I did not need magic. Written and narrated by Kat Day. I suggest you don't try to struggle, my dear. I'm sure you thought this would be easy. What danger is an old woman all alone? In and out, simple. Help yourself to the purse on the kitchen table. Grab some jewellery, probably just lying around. Perhaps the Hummel figurines if you've any sort of an eye. My shopping bag too, to put it all in. Leave the television, it's too bulky, and who watches television these days? Anyway, It's all gone rather differently, hasn't it? Best laid plans, and all that. Not that I suspect you planned very much. Do you know what's funny? For me, obviously, not you. If you tried this when I was younger, it would have been less risky. Oh, I was stronger then, yes. Legs that didn't tire, sharp eyes, keen ears, muscles that obeyed my commands almost before I had to make them. And there was a man in the house once too. Mind you, he'd probably want me to let you go. He never did like a disagreement. But he is not here, and I am not him. See, that's the thing. When I was young, I did not need magic. Let me just get my tea, dear. It feels terribly impolite not to offer you one, but you can't drink it, so... Taste is where it began, you know. It faded. I'm not even sure that was age. Do people lose their taste as they get older? There was that virus, wasn't there? They said that affected taste. Maybe I had that. Anyway, goodness, listen to me rambling. It doesn't matter what caused it. The point is, I couldn't bear it. I always enjoyed food and drink. The sweetness of honey, the warmth of spices, umami from a good broth, sour cherries. I loved it all. And when I found I couldn't distinguish all those flavours, I decided to find a way to enhance it. That was the first spell, you see. This tea really is very good. It's Assam, malty, astringent, absolutely delicious with a splash of milk. Let me enjoy it for a moment, won't you, my dear? Not that you have much choice in the matter, of course. Where was I? Ah, yes. The trouble is, you see, the magic leaks. Anyone around me feels the same effect. It wasn't much, to begin with. Most folk just thought they'd taste something particularly intense. But as time went on, I ramped it up a bit. And the thing is, if you have a youthful sense of taste, everything's so fresh and intense, well, it can be a bit much. So people have told me. I dare say the copper taste in your mouth is quite overpowering. Nauseating, probably. This really is good tea. My husband, well, I call him that, but he wasn't really. Albert, his name was. We never actually married. Just never got round to it. He wasn't good at expressing his feelings. Men aren't always, are they? Anyway, like I say, he never did like a disagreement. Would do anything to avoid it, actually. So much so that one day he just got up and left. Can you believe that? Got up, opened the door and walked away. Not so much as a word of goodbye, not a sausage, never spoke to me again. Speaking of hearing, that was next. Very annoying not being able to understand words, pick out the notes of my favourite songs. Bass and treble increasingly hard to make out. Goodness me, does anything age you faster than having to ask people to repeat themselves all the time? Or fiddling with hearing aids? I really couldn't be doing with it. So I thought, well, the same principle. I'll just turn everything up a bit. I'm told, though, that all the little sounds can become quite unpleasant, amplified. A dripping tap becomes a deluge. Breathing becomes a gale. And after a while, a repetitive ticking sound really starts to penetrate. I don't really understand how it works, but I think it's all about energy. Take a little from here, concentrate it there, something like that. I've learned since that it helps to have someone to take from. Experiments. It's a long time since I was at school, but every day's a school day, isn't that what they say? But I'm getting ahead of myself. Oh, there goes the cuckoo clock. Lovely, isn't it? Well, I think so. Expect you to put your hands over your ears if you could. Albert used to do that sometimes, if I shouted. I did have a bit of a temper. Do, if I'm honest. Did I mention that he just walked out one day? He promised he'd never do that, Promised he'd always be there for me, and then he just left. Goodness, I was angry. I cursed and cursed him. Was that the door? Did you hear that? Oh, of course you did. Let me see. Oh, it's just the postman, dear. And look, it's just leaflets. No one sends letters anymore, do they? Were you hoping someone might come looking for you? You were. I can see it in your eyes. The first time in your life you'd actually be glad to see the police, I expect. I can assure you, no one's going to walk in here and save you. Oh, yes, walking. I realised I was getting slower, and I thought, well, I could speed myself up. But the thing is, little tweaks to hearing and taste, that doesn't take much. But this, well, I'm not sure it's entirely logical, but magic isn't, is it? That's why it's magic. Anyway, It was awfully tiring, which was all a bit backwards, really. So in the end, I thought, fuck it. Do excuse my language. I'm not going to exhaust myself speeding up for everyone else. Why should I? The magic was affecting other people anyway. I mean, accidentally at that point. Mostly. Side effects, you might say. But still, why not do it on purpose? It's all the same in the end. So I just started slowing people down a bit. I got really good at it, actually. Subtle. Because if it's too much, people start to notice. They start to ask questions like, is it stuffy in here? And have you got a carbon monoxide detector? And did you put something in this tea? So I worked out how to persuade people they wanted to go slower, that they were a little tired, muscles a touch heavy. Perhaps they'd think they'd been overdoing it a bit. And then it'd just take a tiny nudge, and they'd decide it was nice to take things easy, actually. Smell the roses, sort of thing. On the other hand, if I want, I can bring them to a complete stop. I left your diaphragm, obviously, and your heart, and some other essentials. It'd be no fun otherwise. Can't have you leaving me, like he did. And you see, it turns out that all that wanting in you is quite useful. You want to scream. You want to put your hands over your ears. Move all those lovely big muscles in your legs and run out of the door as fast as you can. But you can't. Like an elastic band, all stretched, ready to fly across the room. Potential. I can feel it, and I can use it. It's delightful. I feel so much stronger. And you can't even move your eyelids to blink. I expect that stings a bit. I do know what it's like to have bad eyes. Mine aren't bad for my age, not really. But they're not as good as they were. And I do appreciate nice, bright light. Like this one. They call it a daylight bulb. It's all energy efficient these days, but apparently it's like the old 150 watt bulbs. What would I know? That's a good pun, isn't it? What? I know you'd laugh if you could. Anyway, it's bright. I do know that. I'll bet you're just wishing for cataracts, eh? And I imagine you're wondering what I'm going to do. See, the thing is, I reckon you've done this before. My good friend Margot, someone broke into her place last week, took her ruby engagement ring. She was terribly upset. So really, I'm doing everyone a favour, keeping you here. Out of action, you might say. I could end it. I can do that, you know. And then I could just call the police and tell them you broke in and, oh, my goodness, I have no idea what happened. They just collapsed, officer. The coppers had put it down to a heart defect or something. After all, what could an old lady possibly have done? And then they'd finish doing whatever it is they do. And who would I have to talk to then? No one. Besides, all that potential is nice. My eyes are better. My hearing is sharper. No. I think I'll keep you around. I don't feel guilty. After all, I didn't invite you in. But I can't leave you sitting in that armchair. Margot will be around for tea later and she wouldn't understand. No, I need to put you somewhere. Somewhere close. It works better that way. There's a cupboard, there, under the stairs. You see? You'll fit. There you go. Stand up. Funny sensation, I imagine, desperately wanting to move, but at the same time not wanting to move. I expect you've got awful pins and needles too, my dear. Good job you can't scream, eh? Let me just open the door for you. Oh, don't mind him. That's just Albert. Well, it was. I tracked him down, eventually. It was lovely to have him back. Will you look at that? My last bit of tea's gone cold, and it is such good tea, and so much nicer with you around, my love. I'll just make myself a fresh one. Did I mention that Albert never was much of a listener?
The weaponized grandmother is perhaps the most horrifying of weapons the country Kat and I share can wield on the battlefield of familial and societal obligation. Except perhaps for the ability the heroine of this story embodies. To keep calm and carry on, to do what needs to be done. Least said, soonest mended. To step over the dead bodies to make sure the weird toilet paper cover in the shape of a lady in an old-timey dress is straight, because that being crooked is far worse than actual murder. Horror and courtesy, reticence and guilt, implication and nightmare, all wrapped up in 3 words. Well, it was. Damn, Kat. Great work. Next up, we have Yes, Mother by H.B. Diaz. This was originally published in the Crypt online magazine in April of 2021 under the title Mother. H.B. is a gothic mystery and horror writer whose short stories have appeared in publications from Flame Tree Press, Ghost Orchid Press, Horror Tree, and others. She is the author of Nocturne, a collection of dark tales, and her gothic romance novel, The Ghost of Ravenswood Hall, is forthcoming from publisher Literary Wanderlust. She is a member of the Horror Writers Association and lives with her family in a historic and pretty likely haunted town on America's eastern coast. You will find her social media links, of course, in the show notes. Our narrator this week is the magnificent Gemma Amor. Gemma is a very good friend of mine and a phenomenally talented author and podcaster and scriptwriter. One of the other things you'll find in the show notes are all the various things that Gemma has done, and much like with the amazing H.B. Diaz, we recommend literally all of them. In particular, Give Full Immersion, which is Gemma's new book that came out as we write this and record this a couple of weeks ago, a try. It's great. So, once more, into the breach. Once more, to the truth.
Yes, Mother by H.B. Diaz. Narrated by Gemma Amor. The children were hungry. As the shovel sparked against stone, a single flash in the velvet dark, Mary heard their cries. She saw them in her mind, wide eyes pleading and swollen from crying, and the weight of what she meant to do became easier to bear. Blood crawled between her blistered fingers and down the wooden handle of the shovel. The bell that hung over her mother's grave rang and rang, as it had from the post of the sickbed. "Coming, Mother," Mary answered, as always. She gathered the filthy hem of her dress and began again, each strike of the spade bringing her closer to what ought to have been the corpse of her lunatic mother. The strychnine hadn't worked. Mary examined each detail of what she had done, how carefully she had measured, how cleverly she had masked the bitterness in Mother's tea with a spoonful of sweet cream and honey. She performed this ritual for weeks on end, drop by drop, until eventually death caught her mother's scent. Instead of sending her across the Lethe, however, he'd merely closed her eyes in slumber, like a maiden from a fairy tale. And so the bell tolled. Still, her mother lived. Neither the pouring rain nor the clatter of horses in the street could drown her mother's words, sung through teeth clenched in madness, as the layers of earth between them thinned. Mary, Mary, quite contrary, how does your garden grow, with silver bells and cockle shells? Mary shut her eyes, resisting a mounting urge to flee. She thought of the anatomist on Burke Lane, of that day she'd passed his lecture hall and watched as he cut into the corpse of a young man, 100 students looking on with her. He would need another. At long last, Mary's shovel struck wood. The coffin lid was not so difficult to open as she had expected. It creaked on its hinges as the silt fell away, pebbles dropping onto the pillowed silk inside. An expression of terrible sanity came over her mother's gaunt features as Mary knelt down over her. "You mean to kill me twice, child?" she whispered in a crow's voice. "Yes, mother." Mary collected the soaked hem of her dress once more and held it over her mother's mouth and nose. Too weak to scream, the old woman simply shut her eyes and waited for death to revisit her. Rain fell into the coffin, pooling in the hollow of her mother's throat and trickling along a streambed of wrinkles. Mary held her breath, waiting, until at last the bell fell silent. That night, when Mary returned home to her children, with loaves of bread and lamb chops wrapped in paper, her pockets heavy with money to spare, Mother's voice echoed still in her ears. "Mary, Mary." "Children," she called over the rhyme, "set the table for supper." Tiny feet padded to the kitchen. With cries of delight, they answered, "Yes, Mother."
My mum has this amazing mutant ability to let me know vitally important things about the family via one remove. When Marguerite and I first got together, I lost count of the amount of times I'd see the pair of them chatting as Mum carefully unravelled, in the exact same conversational tone that Diaz so perfectly captures above, something deeply awful and horrifying from her past. My mum's great, and my mum is the toughest person I know. She was a single mother in the 60s in the UK, raising my sister and putting herself through nursing college with only my grandmother for help, and I found out all of this 3 decades into my life. Because after a while, reticence becomes armour. There are things you tell people once you're safe, and there are things I'd imagine you tell people once you know your children are safe too. And then there are the things you tell no one, and what I love about this story is the way Diaz leaves it up to us to decide whether that reticence is shame or the fire the lead will warm themselves and their kids by for a long, long time. Or perhaps again, the fire she will burn in. Our final story this week is How to Make Homemade Marshmallows with Grandmother by Taylor Ray. This is a PseudoPod original, and do please check the episode notes because if I remember correctly, there's a marshmallow recipe in there you're going to want to check out. Taylor Ray is a recently reformed mountain troll who is trying out city living. She holds her bachelor's degree in psychology and English literature from the University of Idaho. Her work has appeared in Flash Fiction Online, Press 53, and the anthology Upon a Twice Time. The narrator for this story is Siobhan Gallican, so without further ado, once more, and once more to the truth.
How to Make Homemade Marshmallows with Grandmother by Taylor Ray. Read by Siobhan Gallican. 1. If you're the cook, hide your relief. Grandmother hates ungrateful children. Stand obediently as she hobbles your feet together. Ignore the scarlet pain blooming in your half-healed, lacerated left ankle. Say, "Thank you, kind grandmother." Even though you're 30. Even though she's not your grandmother. 2. Gather your ingredients. Whisper, "I'm sorry," as you unlock the cage. Handcuff them. Bring them to the kitchen. Note, when they scream, fight, beg, forget all those nights holding each other, promising you would escape together or die. 3. Take the grinning handsaw from grandmother. Keep your face expressionless when she says, "The gelatine needs 4 pounds of bone." 4. Consider running. Listen to grandmother's sharpened knife thunk through cold butter, your nerves tingling, as if your very flesh is imagining grandmother slicing it off, layer by layer. 5. Don't cry. God damn it, don't cry. 6. Harvest the ingredients. Close your eyes, but never forget the screams. The copper reeks so strong you can taste it. 7. Scrub blood from the tile floor while grandmother simmers the bones. When she says, "I thought my sweet child deserved a treat," answer, "Thank you, kind grandmother," earnestly, instantly. 8. Sleep alone in the cage that once held 5 other captured, wounded hikers. Know the hobble grandmother left on you as a promise. You're next, sweet child. 9. Keep grandmother happy. Keep yourself alive. In the morning, cheerily scrape yellow jewelled fat off the cool gelatin. Wash the dishes as grandmother mixes the gelatin with sugar syrup. When she hums a Sinatra tune, that's life, I can't deny it, sing until she joins in, her smile a death mask, her laughter chains on your stone. 10. That night in the cage, hold your fever-hot ankle. Remember the last clear image of life before. Hiking off trail, lost, the near winter twilight stitching frost quilts in the shadows. Remember seeing the cabin beyond the pines just as you stepped into grandmother's hidden bear trap. Remember the silent forest carrying your scream. Remember grandmother standing over you smiling, saying, "Are you lost, sweet child?" 11. In the morning, when your opportunity comes, don't hesitate. Hesitation is choosing to die here. 12. Cut the marshmallows while grandmother rests in her rocking chair. Slip the knife under a yellow kitchen towel. Pray grandmother doesn't notice. 13. Obey when grandmother says, "Taste it." With your mouth full of pennies and bile, tell her it's perfect. Now be a good child and bring grandmother a piece. 14. Show grandmother your gratitude. Serve her a marshmallow, the yellow towel on your palm, the cold knife pressed to your fingers. When she leans forward, exposing her leathery neck, plunge the knife into the rigid tube of her esophagus. Quick, but not painless. Grandmother trained you well. She will howl and thrash, blood soaking your forearms. Hold her down. Hold no guilt. 15. Find your gear in a hall closet with grandmother's trophies. Carnival bright coats, cracked compasses, blood-stained trail maps. Get dressed. Limp out of the door. 16. Run. Never look back.
Holy wow. Gather your ingredients. Whisper, "I'm sorry," as you unlock the cage is chilling. This entire story is like watching a surgeon work, each word opening something new, something awful, something we can't walk away from, but we can, perhaps, run from. I'm also going to full on stand on my chair and applaud editorial for bookending this episode with these 2 stories. Narrative resonance. It's what's for dinner, but hey, at least we're not. Such a great story, precise and nightmarish and saying so much with so little. What a fantastic round off to a fantastic trio of flash pieces. Thank you to all the narrators and all the authors. 5 shows deep. Escape Artists podcast includes EscapePod, PseudoPod, Podcastle, Cast of Wonders, and Catscast. It's an amazing team of people, and as I enter the first straight of my 16th year doing this, I'm stunned and honoured to work with them all. And with you. Because you're on the team too. We rely on you to pay our authors and cover our server costs, and frankly, every other cost too. We're donation funded, and we are now at the point where we are able to pay everyone, and that is a major benchmark because we believe everyone who works in this field should be rewarded for the time they give to this field. Without any element of our staff, any element at all, from editors to authors to hosts to producers to slush readers and associate editors, the entire system collapses. The show ceases to be. Everyone is needed, and everyone deserves to be paid. And to do that, we really need your help. We know times are tough, and we know they're getting tougher. But if you can donate any amount, please do. And you really can donate any amount you want, or get a subscription from $5 a month through PayPal and Patreon. That gets you access to the support bonus content, including PseudoPod extrusions and extra episodes of the Magnificent Cats Cast. It's a great deal. You get things, we get money to make more things that you then get. So, if you can, please help out. We'll be back next week with Cockcrow Inn by Todd Robbins and read by the mighty Wilson Fowley. Then, as now, we will be a production of Escape Artists Incorporated and released under a Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives license. Chelsea will be working audio magic that week, and I, once again, will be returning as your host. And so, we leave you for this week with this quote from Trick or Treat, one of my all-time favourite Halloween movies. Smashing jack-o'-lanterns, stealing candy. It's okay. Believe it or not, I was just like you when I was a kid. Till my dad set me straight, that is. See, my dad taught me tonight is about respecting the dead. Because this is the one night that the dead and all sorts of other things roam free and pay us a visit. All these traditions, jack-o'-lanterns, putting on costumes, handing out treats, they were started to protect us. But nowadays, no one really cares.